Welcome back, everybody, to another episode of the Seven Figures or Bust podcast. My name is Christian Brindle. This is episode 38. I'm joined with my co-host, Glen Shelton, and our first guest appearance that we've had on the show since we revised the format and Glen and I started doing it together. I'd like to introduce her title on the screen, you might notice, is the Queen of Social Security, Miss Joanna Wyckoff, the admin of multiple very successful Facebook groups, Medicare Mentors for one, the Insurance Ladies, I believe, is another. There's several others. And founder, CEO of Top Flight Insurance Solutions. Joanna, welcome to the show.
Thanks, guys. We are old-time friends. Christian, I was just thinking while I was getting ready this morning, I was like, I think I was on one of your very first podcasts that was public to agents. I think it was like your episode 100 or something for Everything Medicare back in 2019. So Christian and I have been podcasting together for years.
We really have. It's not an exaggeration. And I mean, I feel like every time we do a piece of content together, the first thing I always say is, it feels very easy. By the way, Glenn, can you try to pin the stream in the Facebook group? It's not letting me, and it's driving me crazy.
I'm on it for Brindle Nation. I will get this pinned.
Thank
ASAP.
you. Thank you,
yes,
Boo.
Sir.
Thank you,
Yes,
Boo.
We got a special episode today, you guys. We have a special episode today. I'm excited for this.
We do. We have some awesome topics to kind of cover with you guys today with Joanna. Super excited about it. The first kind of like introduction topic that we're going to kind of be addressing is, I feel like a lot of agents know about it, but I also feel like a lot of agents don't. And it's kind of surprising to me because I feel like it's been kind of maybe not a huge deal, but it's been fairly well broadcast by the carriers and in trainings and things like that.
Yes.
And that's this FEMA SEP change. So I will kind of quickly just explain what's going on. And then Joanna, I'd love to kind of get your reaction kind of to it and your thoughts on it. I know that you recently did a show. Quickly give us a plug for your podcast, by the way, that you do with Kathy. I know you did an episode about this recently.
She's nervous, you guys. She's nervous.
It was released yesterday. The Insurance Business Babes on all platforms. You can find it on Amazon, Spotify, everywhere. We have been podcasting, Kathy and I, audio only. We don't do cameras at this point in time. But we released an episode yesterday about this very topic. So when Christian said he wanted to talk about it, I was like, I could talk about that. Pretty easy. I have a lot of polar thoughts on it,
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. So for those of you that aren't aware with the FEMA SEP change, so a lot of you know Medicare Advantage has a multitude of different enrollment periods, right? Special enrollment periods you can use to enroll somebody outside of open enrollment, outside of their IEP, et cetera, right? Outside of OEP. And one of them that's been used into the ground, which I suspect has probably caused this, as most, usually you can usually look back and see a trend that kind of leads up to something like this. But essentially it's a disaster SEP, right? A natural disaster that takes place in a certain area, and such as a hurricane, fires in California, earthquakes, things like that.
Right.
And it allows somebody to enroll into a plan if they missed a qualifying enrollment period. Yeah. But what it didn't take agents long to figure out is those things aren't really checked. And like, if it was put down on an app, I'm not advocating for this or suggesting you do this, by the way. Don't do this. But agents started to figure out over the years that if you put it down on an app with a lot of carriers, like it wasn't checked. It wasn't like, even if it was like a state, like there could be like a hurricane in Florida and you could use it in Washington or Oregon or something where like the other side of the country. And it's like, oh yeah, good deal. We'll take it. You know what I mean? Yeah. So as of 4/1, that SCP cannot be used anymore by agents. And the only way I'm going to take advantage of it is to call 1-800-Medicare and self-enroll. No broker, no agent,
Right.
no physician, no carrier. They can't even enroll direct to carrier, is my understanding. Joanna, give us your reaction to that when you first heard about it and what your thoughts are.
So I have two thoughts on it. I think it's good because I'm tired of stuff being abused by, let's face it, it's usually call centers who are burn and churn. They're just trying to flip clients out of plans, and there's no valid SCP, so they're going to use the disaster. Or there's another SCP, starts with an M, that call centers are known to use because nobody also checks that one either, right? Because you can use that SCP before it occurs. And the agents come into our Facebook groups and tell us, they'll post anonymously, my manager is trying to make me move everybody using this disaster code today. We don't live in Florida, so I think it's good to protect our books of business and innocent clients who are being flipped out of plans that are good for them into plans that might not be suitable for them. But on the other hand, all right, so right now we have a national disaster going on the West Coast. California is on fire, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that's a valid SCP. If someone has an IEP right now or is going to miss an OEP because they needed to make a change, maybe a lot of people are going to the pharmacy right now figuring out that their drugs might not be covered, or they're going to their doctors and their doctor isn't in network anymore and they wanted to make a change. So normally if they missed that change because they were evacuated, right? A lot of people are flying out of the state. They're being evacuated. They're, everybody's losing everything over there. That would normally be a disaster SCP if they missed their window, if they missed their IEP window, right?
Mm-hmm.
It removes the agent, Joanna, Christian, as the AOR. So if that's my client, or I did the education and we talked before Christmas and their birthday is 2/1 and they wanted to, make a change and then missed it, it removes us as the agent of record. And unless the carrier has an AOR where you can assign the agent of record, which very few carriers do anymore, it's a loss of revenue for me, especially if I did if I helped them apply for their Part B, if I helped them do the IRMA reduction, if I helped them, maybe I helped them with Medicare Savings Program, maybe I helped them with extra help for Part D, and now I'm losing the ability to be that client's agent, right? That's not just time. I lost $16 a minute, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's not. It's people say, oh, you lost it. I lost money by servicing them and not another client, or a lost opportunity. I lost them by not being able to hang out with Violet, right?
Absolutely.
And so that's the downside of it. So, but Christian, I think it's always the bad actors, the two bad kids in the class, right? It's always the two bad kids in the class that change it for the good kids,
Class clowns.
Right.
That was me.
Oh,
You were the class clown.
Sorry.
Christian ruins it for everybody.
If you ever get a chance to talk to anybody that went to high school with me, they're like, he was obnoxious. He was a terror.
Maybe we have a podcast. Let's get some people who knew you in high school on the podcast. Let's do that.
I'm shocked. I was probably the shyest person in my early years. I mean, I didn't come out of my shell until 5 years ago. So I'm shocked.
For context, right? I went to a small, sheltered Christian school. Our graduating class was like,
I didn't know that.
I didn't know that either. They were discovering things live on camera.
I didn't know that. My parents created a small
things.
Christian school.
15 kids were in my graduating class.
I was a class of one.
What?
I was a class of one.
What?
It was mostly younger kids.
Yeah.
You guys are I had 700 in my graduating class, 4,000 people in my high school.
Wow.
I was a goldfish.
My entire high school maybe had 100 kids, probably not.
That's wild. Okay, hang on. I don't want to lose this topic because this is actually I think an important topic. And I'm in the call center space and I have a lot of peers and friends who own call centers. So this came on my radar, I want to say like August last year. Does that sound about right? So this was whenever this first got announced, I was immediately made aware that this had happened because the call centers were all like, oh shit. There was like this collective oh shit moment because there was some misuse on this. And it sucks because the intention of this code is, I think it's valid. Just like you mentioned, Joanna, California's on fire right now. There's probably some people who might need to use, the disaster code in the future, etc. There's going to be situations where this code was created for a reason that now these people might not be able to utilize it. And that sucks when a beneficiary loses out because of some bad actors. Right. I do think overall this will be a huge benefit for the average agent. So, hats off to CMS for doing something that I think is overall most likely going to be a good change. But again, it sucks because I wish it didn't have to be like this. I wish we could still have, if only the people who were misusing it got shut down, right? And we didn't all get locked down. That's what I wish could happen. But I think I'd rather have this happen than, these call centers continue to ramp up in the off season, essentially abusing the disaster code, which is what I've seen happen firsthand.
So here's my thought. I think Joanna hit it right on the head when she said it's the two bad kids in class that act up over 100%. And over again. And let's say you're dealing with my class of 15 and there's two bad kids.
A lot of bad kids.
The other 13, it's like 15% of the class, no big deal. But like the rest of the kids that aren't doing anything wrong, they get punished for it. I never like to see any situation where a client, in order to use an election period that they might have to use, has to call CMS and cut us out. I never want to see that.
That's bad for sure.
I don't like that.
Not just that, but not everybody who answers the phone at the government knows the plans, like Christian knows the plans in Salt Lake City, like Joanna knows the plans in Georgia and Houston and wherever else I work. Like they don't know the intricacies of the plans, and this is what I said on my podcast is like, I have plans that give special benefits, like 4 hours of Papa Pals, different things that you would really have to know that summary of benefit because it's not on the highlights. You know what I'm saying? It's not on Sunfire. It's not something that they're seeing on Connecture. Medicare.gov doesn't even show most of the plan benefits. It just says transportation check, dental benefits check. It doesn't show the intricacies and the actual dollar amount of OTC benefits. It doesn't. You can't. So if you're looking at Medicare.gov and my mom calls and says, "Hi, honey, I need a new plan. I went to the pharmacy and they don't cover my Mounjaro," and they just put her in a plan that covers her Mounjaro, maybe it takes away a benefit that she was expecting to use, I mean, I'm an agent first. I've been an agent since 2016. I have my own book of business. I actually had to work this past AAP. Hopefully next AAP is different. But I look at things as the viewpoint of an agent, not just as an upline, not as a content creator and all the other hats I wear. But my mom is scared to call Social Security, and I worked there. You know what I'm saying? Like a lot of consumers just won't call the government because of their perception, and they might not be service timely. But how many times have people gotten wrong information from a government entity?
All the time,
constantly.
I correct
firsthand. I have.
Yeah, I correct people going to other old Social Security offices because, the knowledge is not the same across the board, and I learn things every day too, right? So I just worry about their experience with that. But I do understand. So here's the thing that I told Kathy. Every carrier and CMS knows all of the work that has my NPN on it. The business I wrote with the disaster codes. Why not punish the kids with the disaster codes too much? If you used 100 disaster codes last year and you don't live in Florida with all the hurricanes during hurricane season, that's who you should be targeting. You know what I'm saying? Why are you targeting Joanna who didn't use any disaster codes last year?
they don't have the ability to micromanage the situation. That's the problem here. And even though the carriers are supposed to be the ones, right? The carriers are supposed to be the ones that enforce the CMS rules, because CMS doesn't have the infrastructure to police the agent force. It's still not happening. So that's why they have to blanket rules. Here's my final thoughts on this, though, is if you had to pick one or the other, right? You have to pick either this continues to get abused, or you have to pick that you can still have access to it when you need it. My understanding is that the average agent probably doesn't use it very often and probably has a higher risk of losing clients from it being abused. So it's a net positive to the average agent. That's my takeaway. And if I had to pick, this is probably better than these call centers that are like just nuking it, just absolutely abusing it.
But I have my thought process is what's next, because we saw this in the ACA space.
Yes,
AOR abuse.
Our minds were in sync on this.
There was an AOR abuse, and now we all have to call in third.
That's true.
And it's like, what's next? Because they're trying to squeeze agents out. Like, let's face it. Like, I think if they could get, and there's a carrier who said, if we don't have to pay agents, we're not going to.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
It's a slippery slope. It's a slippery slope for sure.
Here's to kind of piggyback off that with my final thoughts. I hate to break it to people, but that's not the only SEP that's being abused. So what's to stop the call centers from just starting to use a different one?
They all already used the MO.
I don't want to throw too much out there publicly in terms of that. Not saying that we're doing anything like that internally, but I know what goes on in the business. All three of us do. Yeah. And I just almost feel like it's not a solution. I think if it was a solution to where that was the only SEP that was being used in this way, sure. But I just downloaded the new United Healthcare election period booklet. I call it the election period Bible the other day. I'll post it in the group later this week. Because the one I had was kind of old. That thing is monstrous of all these SEPs.
Humana has a similar one, and we use that. And there's SEPs that agents have never been able to use, But
like getting out of prison. I've never had to use that one. That's my favorite one. Getting out of prison, SEP.
I think we're on a slippery slope this year. They removed commissions from plans, and in the middle of AEP, they removed more commissions from more plans and changed my entire marketing in an entire county. I have an agent in Ohio who can't even sell what's right for consumers because all the good plans went non-commissionable. And he's like, Joanna, the only way I'm going to keep my lights on is to sell these plans with higher max out of pockets and copays. And how am I going to consciously do that for that consumer,
Right.
And I mean, I think they're trying to squeeze the agent out. The carriers say it themselves. They don't want to pay us. The big carrier, Centene, said it. They don't care. They don't care. And I don't care that I'm saying it. Like, that you want to keep my renewals and my book of business because you don't want to pay me $2 a month on that plan. Like,
yeah, 100%.
Yep.
I want to make sure we still have time for the other topic of the show. So I'm gonna shift gears just a second. Glenn, talk to us about this episode's sponsor quickly, if you would.
Yes, guys. Today's episode is supported by Lead Heroes, your favorite insurance lead provider in the senior insurance space. Right now, we have a promotion that just started minutes ago while we were live here on the podcast. You can take advantage of our Turning 65 leads at almost 50% off. It's just $25 per lead when you order a minimum of 25. Now, here's something I want to make sure everyone's super aware of. This is going to be for a limited time and also a limited quantity because there are only so many seniors turning 65 that we can compliantly reach out to, especially with the new FCC rules. We have limited quantities available, And this promotion will only last until January 28th. That's Tuesday, January 28th. So you have just a short amount of time to take advantage of this. If you are looking for more seniors turning 65, head over to leadheroes.com, LEADHEROES.com. We would love to help you grow your insurance business even faster.
Thank you for that.
That's a pretty good deal.
Yeah, 25 for 25, my friends.
That's right.
Before we pivot into the secondary topic of the show, I wanted to give a quick shout out to our very own Patricia St. Louis. Happy birthday, Patricia!
Happy birthday!
Happy birthday!
If you're watching,
Yes.
I hope it's a fantastic day. I hope it's awesome. I saw you were watching on the live for just a minute. I hope you can do something more exciting than listen to me talk or listen to us.
Yeah.
I am really excited for her. Is she getting her first microphone in a couple weeks?
Her first microphone? Oh, I don't.
Is that her first?
I don't know if it's her first. I'm not sure.
It's the first time I'm going to see her on a stage.
Okay.
Well, she was on the summit stage last year on a panel.
Oh, okay.
This might be her first individual.
Yeah.
Maybe.
So
maybe.
That would be big.
That's so exciting. She's going to become a regular.
That's right.
Well deserved.
She should be.
Well deserved.
Yes, as she should be.
Okay, let's shift gears into the other topic of the show, and that is the one that the show is titled on. What is it like as an upline to work with agents? Because I feel like, and Joanna, I'm sure that you get this same kind of feeling at times. Agents that come into the business, right?
Mm-hmm.
They've been licensed 6 months. They write a couple of policies. And they're like, it must be fun to recruit agents. You know what I mean? Especially the ones that come from the MLMs, right? Like those are the worst to me. Like
I was the worst.
Well, I'll tell you what. They're the worst. They're the worst to break this mentality because they got trained from the very beginning as a new babe to recruit, and it's in their DNA. And the fact of the matter is, well, I don't want to destroy my punchline right off the bat. Joanna, talk about this, right? Like,
yeah. So I don't know how many people know, but I started at a company that was encouraging recruiting before you even had your license in your hand. Ooh. And you don't know what you don't know.
Right.
And so their mentality was, if you introduce them to us, you'll get a 5% override and your upline will help you train them. So that was the pitch. But in order to get promoted, so I was doing life insurance first. This is before my Medicare days. I was doing life insurance. Life insurance was hard. They wouldn't let me buy leads in Atlanta, Georgia. I had to buy leads from them in different states. It was rough. I had a full-time job. I couldn't get a ride along. Anyways, I had to recruit enough people to get my next promotion. And they had me at like a 55% annual premium contract, which is really like half of what street level is, right?
Sure.
Right.
I remember recruiting my baby sister, Abby, because I thought it would be good for Abby. Abby's been, she got disabled young when she was in college. She got really sick. But I learned very fast that it's actually not the best business model because they don't tell you that you're also legally, financially responsible for their roll-up debt. And Abby wrote a policy. It was in good faith. She wrote a policy with a carrier that does advances, and that client canceled it like 2 months later. And then Abby didn't have the money to pay back that commission. You know, she's on disability, but the money was already spent. Being her upline and her JoJo, you know, I ended up having to pay it back, but I was like, that kind of sucks, you know? And I think that's where, like, there's not that much risk in the Medicare space, but I just got a text message from one of my managers this morning. A newer agent that is new to us tried to get advances on a product recently, and their persistency rate in just the last 2 months is in the toilet. And we're like, we're not advancing on that, you know? But like, here's what I tell agents now is oxygen mask first. And I wish somebody told me that, because when I got into the Medicare space in 2017, it was rough. And then I started sharing my knowledge on Facebook and stuff. And people were like, hey, Joanna, can you teach me? Can you teach me? And I was spread thin, but I felt obligated to teach, you know. And a lot of them didn't continue the business after a year. A lot of them, I would spend 80 hours teaching. I bought iPad Pros, I bought leads, and then they either stopped trying to sell insurance or went with somebody else. And imagine if I didn't give them that time and I just focused on Joanna.
Yeah.
You know, so I really wish my former mentor said, stop, don't recruit. If somebody wants, you know, to work, send them to me. And I'll take
mentors out there. I said it
Yeah.
yesterday on the pod.
We just
There's
talked
some
about this
bad
yesterday.
mentors out there. You got to
Yeah.
be careful.
I feel like you touch on such a great point, because when you first get started building the business,
Yes,
you have zero money coming in, zero revenue. You are working 100% on commission, and it takes a lot of time to produce enough business and to build up your business up. It takes a lot of focus. It takes a lot of time. And on top of that, you're learning a tremendous amount, right? You're learning an avalanche. You're drinking from a fire hose. At the same time, you don't know what you're doing. You're spreading yourself too thin because you're trying to, you know, teach someone else something. It's the blind leading the blind. I remember when I was 2 years in, I want to say, into the business, and I had an old friend who was actually, ironically, in an MLM with me before I got into insurance. And he invites me and another agent who's a mutual friend to his house because he wants to talk to us about this opportunity, right? Anytime I hear talking to me about an opportunity today, I know exactly what it means. I hide. I don't answer my phone. I'm like a hermit these days. Like, I just, you know, if I respond to our agents and people we do business with and friends and things like that, but I just hide from everyone else. But anyway, we go to this house, right? And it was Primerica.
Ooh.
I
And
have a story.
And my friend was studying
Alarm
to get
bells.
his license. So just like Joanna said, he was studying to get his license. He wasn't even licensed, but he was trying to recruit us into it. And I was already doing pretty well, you know, in Medicare. And I was like, and the person that he brought to recruit us had her license like 2 or 3 months herself. Right. So it's this like never ending like chain of people that don't know what the hell they're doing. And and my friend and I were both in the business. We showed up and we just annihilated them because we knew 100,000 times more than they did at that point. We were 2 years in. We both had a book of businesses that were growing. You know, we were both doing well at this point. And I think like that puts, and guess what happened to my friend? And I'm sure this recruiter, you know, that had been licensed 2 months. He's not in the business. I'm sure she's not in the business. It's setting people up for failure.
Yes.
Yeah.
So full transparency, I was 2 weeks out of the Air Force in 2007, disabled. I had gotten hit in the chest with a pressurized air hose on a jet, and I could barely walk around the grocery store. The Air Force said, hey, you got 2 weeks to move. Bye. And I had just married my foreign husband, who I was legally, financially responsible for. He could not work in the United States. And I saw Primerica at a job fair, and they were saying that they were hiring. Here's the thing. Don't use the word hiring if it's not a W-2 paycheck. You know what I'm saying? Like, I'm so against that. So the guy says, come to my office for an interview. I thought it was a legit work opportunity. Right. And I do the interview, and he says I have to pay for my background check. Now, I'm straight out of the military. I thought it was like paying for my secret clearance, you know? Like, I didn't really, it was before Facebook and stuff, you know? And so I give to my last $250 because I didn't get my retirement check yet. And I pay what I thought was for my background check. I go to the live class for 40 hours. It was 8 to 5, an hour away. And I'm sitting in the class, and my personality back then was very quiet, very meek. I didn't I was not loud and boisterous like today. I didn't challenge authority because I'm a military girl. In the military, you don't talk back to your staff sergeant, you know.
Right.
I'm just listening and observing, and I heard some whispering. And my recruiter, he was former military. He said he was like a lieutenant colonel, which is really high up in the military. Anyways, he brought me to a Primerica convention, and they wanted me to buy the pamphlets to sell insurance. And I was like,
this episode of the 7 Figures or Bust podcast is brought to you by the 7 Figure University. 7figureuniversity.com is a culmination of Christian Brindle's and mine's educational videos that we have developed over the past 2 decades of combined experience in the senior insurance space. There's more than 250 videos, hundreds of hours of content that can help you become a top producer or a top producing agency in the senior insurance space. We're talking about videos of how to work with specific carriers, how to do different types of marketing, such as seminars or Facebook advertising, how to generate content in the niche to help grow your business, how to grow an agency, all sorts of things. There's so much value in this. It's unbelievable. Christian, what do agents need to know about 7 Figure University?
7 Figure University can best be thought of as an agency blueprint in a box that's put together for you that brings you step by step in every facet of building a successful 7-figure insurance agency and lays it out all in front of you so you can follow along. Whether you guys need help with marketing, whether you guys need help with branding, whether you guys need help with hiring, training, standard operating procedures, systems and processes, automation, you name it, it's covered in this course. Not only that, you get access to my weekly training calls every Thursday that go from January through the end of September on a week-to-week basis. And you can attend those live and ask questions live. And then, of course, the recordings are put into the university afterward if you can't attend it and make the live training. So there's just so much value. It's the gift that keeps on giving, and it's a great investment into your business to kind of keep you up to date on what's going on, but also kind of point you in the right direction in various things that you're struggling with.
Some of the best training you'll be able to find, you guys, in one spot for one price. Go to 7figureuniversity.com and learn more.
Let's get back to the show.
and anyways, he wanted me to make a list of people I knew. And I said, I literally just moved here from Idaho. I don't know anybody in Georgia. I know my foreign spouse who doesn't have a social. and they didn't pursue helping me. I had spent $250, but I was like, I need a job because I had to pay an electric bill. I had to pay bills, you know?
Right.
Mm-hmm.
And so that was the last I heard from them. When I got back into insurance in 2016, I was already working at Social Security. I was making decent money. I had just finished my master's a couple years before. The reason I got into insurance again was to pay off my master's degree, ironically. But they didn't tell me that I had actually paid for a temporary license in the great state of Georgia, and they mailed my temporary license to their business address, not my address. So I didn't even know that I had a temporary license that I paid for. Like, shame on you.
Wow.
Like here's the thing. If you're going to recruit, tell the entire story. When agents talk to me and say, hey, Joanna, I think I want to, get into insurance and sell Medicare like you. I see you traveling the world. I show the entire story, not just the glam and the glitz and, how I work from home and whatever, because it wasn't always like this,
Sure.
It's not like that day one, week one, year one. 5 years ago, Christian and I were in the middle of COVID having COVID parties, I mean,
Mm-hmm.
The thing is, you have to tell the entire roadmap of what it looks like, right?
Yep.
And tell them the full transparency of the cost and the work that goes into it. Because, I mean, it is a fantastic business. I am so grateful that I did get my insurance license. I'm so grateful that I found my way out of the MLM and into Medicare, which is my heart and soul, my bread and butter. I love Medicare. But it's not all glitz and glam. A lot of people don't talk about how Christian and I do 35 certifications every summer around the country. They don't talk about all the meetings that we're required to go to and all the compliance that we have to do,
Yep.
And we have to do more compliance than the regular agent. We have to help, agents respond, Christian, to allegations. Like last week, I was fighting 2 allegations in different parts of the country for agents that were good agents, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. I think, you know, I think people have a perception that it's all fun and games to have agents that work with you and partner with you as an upline. And I think it's a lot of work. And that's what I tell people, right? Like, and I think if you're not prepared for that, right? And if you want, you want to write a lot of business, that kind of thing. Like I look at our business today, I spend a lot of time working with our partner agents, but we have so many of them now. I can't personally be with all of them all the time either. And I don't write business anymore, right? Like I've had to build our company in a way to where others write the business internally, right? In our staff, like we have such a big staff now, Glenn and I, and I can't imagine. I mean, and when I first started working with agents, I was trying to do it all. I was trying to write business. I was trying to work with agents like that, and I did that for probably about 2 years. At the final year, I thought I was going to die because I was working.
That was me last year.
I was working 100 hours a week, 80 hours minimum. And, I was just running myself into the ground because you try to do everything, you end up suffering at everything. Right. Like, and it's an interesting kind of dynamic. Glenn, talk about it, right? Because you've been an upline now for a little bit over a year. With said merger. Talk about like, what do people get wrong about being an upline? Like what was your perception coming in versus what it looks like now? Like, talk about it.
I think it's worse than I even could have.
By the way,
end stream, guys, end stream. There we go. There we go.
Before he continues, I want to say we love our agents. We love our partner agents. Our agents are amazing, but
let me clarify,
it's hard sometimes.
Let me.
It's hard. I love being an upline, but it's hard.
Yeah, it is. But let me clarify. So I have seen, like, from the marketing side of the business and running Lead Heroes for a decade now, I have seen behind the scenes what it's like to be an upline at some of the biggest organizations. I've understood the metrics. I've worked with agencies and agents firsthand. Like, I understand that a lot of agents come into the business with these expectations that are completely wrong, right? Someone sold them a dream, or maybe they just had, they thought they could just phone it in 10 hours a week and they would get rich. Like, there's a lot of agents like that just don't want to put in the work. They don't want to, really understand what it is, whether it's from, a carrier level, how a carrier underwrites a policy, or, all these different rules and regulations like you guys already talked about. So I already had an idea coming into this before, co-owning an IMO. I already had an idea of kind of what to expect, but there's even less agents than I realized who are actually committed to this as a business, working day in and day out. And it's tough because, just like Joanna and Christian and myself, like I'm here to put in 6 days a week. I'm here to work more than when I had a nice corporate job. I'm working way more than I was before I got into insurance, especially my first 3 years. My first 3 years, I was working 6 days a week. I was working evenings during the weekdays. Like, I was working significantly more than I was before I got into insurance. And I was kind of one of those agents too. Like, I was kind of one of those agents that got into this thinking, oh, I'll work part-time and I'll get rich. And so like, I had to work through that. And it did take about 3 years before I got my footing, I felt like. So it's tough as an upline when you have this understanding now, top down, being in the industry for a decade, working with agents as long as we have. It's tough to know that for every 10 agents that come through the door, you're lucky if one of them are actually going to treat this like a real business, Yeah.
Yeah. I think very well said. And I think it's tricky, right? Like, one thing I always tell people especially when you first start working with agents, like I've had a million agents over the years come to me and be like, I want to start recruiting agents. I'm like, okay, cool. They're like, what does it look like? I'm like, here's what it looks like realistically, right? You recruit 10.
Yeah.
One might be good, maybe. And you're going to waste a ton of time on all 10 of them.
Time,
not knowing
energy,
who's going to be good and who's not going to be good.
Resources, training, all
and
of
you're
it.
going to feel guilty when the 9 that don't work out. You're going to feel like it's your fault. You're going to feel responsible. You want it more for them than they want it for themselves. Some of them might even blame you for their lack of results, right? Like, so, and this whole process might take 3 to 6 months before you get to the end.
Sometimes even longer. I mean, I've been blamed for people not doing their business. And, you know, Christian and I, our business is very similar. Christian and I could be twins, you know, like we both have Facebook groups. We both have really good training universities, and our training is not like the typical IMO trainings, you know, like we don't have curious reading summary of benefits. Like, you know, I know Christian's training and he's seen enough of mine. Like, if you don't come and participate in the relationship, how is it Joanna's fault? Like, if you're not logging into Christian's Zoom training every week and listening to him and following his instruction, not just listening, because a lot of people say that they're attending and then they're actually scrolling TikTok and Facebook. You know, they like I go to enough conferences where people aren't even paying attention on stage; they're on their phones. You know, but how are you going to someone's training, whoever it is, and then not applying the principles that you just learned to your business? Because knowledge without application is a waste of time. You know, it's like my bachelor's in aviation and I don't work in aviation, you know? Like you can have a PhD in insurance, but if you're not going to apply the knowledge, what are you really doing? Like you're spending time, your time and everybody else's time. Like, you know, Christian, there's a misconception that if I put my emeritus contract with you, I am entitled to all of your time and money.
Yes.
Right.
Christian and I talk about those agents privately all the time, where again, it comes down, we have limited time, energy, and resources as an IMO. We can only sink so much time, energy, and resources into specific agents or agencies. And so it does get to a point where it's like, this person has to be cut off. They haven't written a single application. They are reaching out 5 times a day. You know, we've already helped them with marketing potentially. Like, there's all these things that we've potentially already done to try to help this person be successful. And as an upline, you almost have to be like a parent. We call ourselves dads to some of our agents. And it feels like that sometimes, where it's like, okay, no more screen time. You know,
that's the thing that nobody talks about, is we have to show up for the agents before they show up for themselves. Like, you want me to teach you a business before you even consider participating in the business. You know, I mean, because we often lose revenue and time and resources on someone who may never write one application under us. You know, it takes us, how many years does it take us to break even on an agent we train and give our time to? I mean, I'm at like usually like 2-3 years.
I would say 2 years.
If they're a decent agent who writes 100 apps a year, you know,
it takes
years to
2
break
years
even.
of a quality agent. Yeah.
If they even have all their business under me.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. I think like, it's funny, right? Because it is a double-edged sword, right? I don't want people to watch this and get the perception that like it's every single moment of every single day is horrible as an upline. That's certainly not the case. That it's a great rewarding thing when you start working with somebody and you just see them grow and blossom and just grow a business. It's such a cool thing to be able to be a part of. And I will say, probably a small part of, realistically, because they did the work, right? Like, you might have you might have provided some guidance, right? You might have provided some ideas, but they did the work, right?
Yeah.
They're the ones that executed, did the work, and at times, they might even figure some things out on their own, right? Through trial and error, things like that. So that part of it is great. It's just, in our industry, I saw on one of the streams on one of the platforms, somebody was commenting, they're like, I was told when I got into this business that 94% of people were out of the business in 4 years. That's true. And, Glenn, you said it once before, and I think you articulated it so well, that our industry is very attractive to these types of individuals that just bounce from thing to thing to thing.
Yeah.
And that's part of the problem, right? Like, people get in thinking, oh, I'm going to be doing this part-time and I'll do it for a year and I'll sell to Integrity or AmeriLife.
Yeah.
Like I've heard
100%.
somebody tell me that before. Like, someone approached me, they were studying to get their license. They took a consultation call with me, and they're like, the guy sent me this like blueprint. He didn't even have his license yet of bringing out this call center. I'm like, dude, and I've never heard his name since,
I've had a lot of those over the years.
It's almost like delusion of grandeur. One thing I said on yesterday's episode that I think is applicable here, I don't believe that there is any success in anything without getting punched in the face a lot and going through hell. People might be asking themselves, how do I break through? How do I be one of those people that's successful? If you're willing to put yourself through a ton of hell to learn, that will help. I mean, trainings are good. Trainings are great. Trainings are good. But there's also the flip side where there's the agent that attends every training
and doesn't go apply it.
And doesn't apply it.
There's the question. This is perfect. I want to stop you guys right here. There's a question here in the group from Miss Sandra Gephardt. Shout out to Sandra. What do you recommend for agents that are stuck in the training loop? How do they kick themselves out of it? I wanted to bring this question in when I saw it because there's so many of these agents out there that are like, I need to buy every course, I need to study everything, and they never take action. So what would you guys say to those agents?
So if they had some money, shameless plug for Lead Heroes, but Glenn, I wish that preset appointments existed in 2016 when I was a new agent and I sucked on the phone. I still suck on the phone. Like, I am like, the phone weighed 1,000 pounds, but I was paying $40 for direct mail leads that were resold 5 weeks later out from underneath me in a different state. I would have paid, $80 for a preset appointment to show up and sell a product to somebody who said, yes, I need help. I would have. So if somebody has some money, and I have agents who, one of my agents has 120 pending appointments with you, like, we believe in the preset appointments. We do business with Lead Heroes. I would have died for preset appointments. I mean, I believe in that. If a new agent is having trouble getting going, invest in your own self. Make sure you have a good upline who answers the phone, right? And get some preset appointments, because I would have killed for that in 2016.
Yeah.
Love it.
Yeah. I think so. I think about myself starting out, right?
Mm-hmm.
I started out in the business. I'll never forget this. I've told this story before. I'll summarize it because I know we're running short on time. But I was taught to cold call when I started in the business for Medicare supplements. I always have to say that because I
know what your past is.
Someone's going to come at. Yeah,
Joanna and Christian are very different. You couldn't get Joanna to cold call nobody, not even for dental.
2014, it was a different time, right? So, but that's what I was taught. Even back then, it was not an efficient way to grow your business.
Right.
But that's what I was taught to do. I didn't know anything. I was 20 years old, 21 years old. And so I remember in the beginning my hand would shake when I was going to pick up the phone and call people. I had this theory even for a little while that if I called just women, they were less likely to yell at me than men. That obviously is not true whatsoever.
They were the meanest to me on Social Security.
Yeah. And so my first 6 months or so, I would say, on doing that, I was not good on the phone.
Mm-hmm.
And I said this the other day on a pod. I think door knocking and cold calling, they're like cousins, you know, this is similar type of difficulty. But that's what I was doing today. I think I'm one of the best telesales agents you can find, right? Like I did a video last year for 3 or 4 hours. I was calling Lead Hero leads and I recorded it and we shrunk it down to like an hour and a half, 2 hours. So it wouldn't be, horrific to watch because it was so long, but and I had no fear. I'm just like, is this over yet? I'm just bored, but I got there not through going through any fancy training, to believe it or not. I got there because I made thousands, tens of thousands, probably hundreds of thousands of phone calls.
Yeah.
And I put myself out there. I took a lot of punches to the face to when and then eventually I got to the point where if I got punched in the face, it didn't really hurt as bad anymore.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Right. And I'm a big believer in those reps and that experience and going through the pain to really kind of shape and mold you who you are. And most people don't want to go through that. Most people want the shortcut. Now, could I have built my business more efficiently and, at the beginning? Sure, but I didn't know any better. But that experience is a blessing to me today because I think it made me a tougher, more resilient business person, but it also helped me develop into a really good salesperson.
I'll tell you what I'm doing now, Sandra. If a new agent knocks on my door and we decide to take them, usually I put rookies under a GA or MGA, not direct to me, because they'll just get more love and I can't, answer what is Q&B all day. We're trying to start them with ACA instead of Medicare, because if you're not willing to do a free 4-hour certification with Open Google and go prospect and learn how to write it on Health Sherpa by asking them their name and address, they're not going to learn the hundreds of hours of Medicare stuff, And so it's actually my limit test. Like if you can't write one ACA prospecting with very little regulation, you're not going to make it doing Medicare. You're never going to sell one Medicare if you can't sell one ACA, because I can walk into McDonald's and sell some ACA to the cashiers who don't get group health insurance at McDonald's. I can sell, ACA walking around barbershops and nail salons and stuff. If you do enough prospecting, and this business is an activity game. You're not going to have activity sitting at home watching podcasts. Ironically, we're on a podcast. You're not going to
don't turn off. Don't stop watching.
Don't listen to her.
You got 5 minutes left. But like
the last time Joanna's a guest.
I'm the last time. I don't want you watching Joanna's Social Security training if you're less than 10 apps in. I don't want you. It's not the right training for you at the right time. I don't want you watching our succession training and our ESRD training. I don't want you watching that if you haven't done some apps. I want you out there prospecting. Watch our prospecting trainings. Watch how we do stuff. Watch my how to do an event training. Watch how Christian does his how to dial an appointment. Right. I want you to do the new agent bootcamp stuff and then go apply it. Get out the house. You're not I have a different perspective than Christian. I think it's easier to learn the business at the kitchen table out in the field than it is on the phones because it's less personal. I had the worst.
I agree with that, by the way.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah,
I agree.
Because like for you to look up stuff on, the carriers' websites, people will be like, "Are you there? Hello?"
Yeah.
If you're face to face, they can see it.
And for some clarity on that, like when I was starting and I was making cold calls, to make appointments at their house. Like back then, it was almost impossible to do telesales, especially for Medicare Advantage, right?
Yeah,
like there was no
signatures back then,
right? Yeah. There was no e-apps or anything like that.
The dark ages.
I completely agree. I did for my first. I don't think I did an electronic app until I was 3 or 4 years in, and so I couldn't agree more with you because it's way more difficult for someone to slam the door in your face or walk you out of their house than it is to hang up the phone on you. It's much easier to do that. So I think your conversion rates will be higher too, no matter how bad you are at the beginning.
For sure.
Some people will take pity on you because they're
But-
looking at your dopey face at their kitchen table, and you're like,
Yeah.
they're like, oh, look at this little guy.
If
You know.
I would focus on selling an easier product first before Medicare. Like everybody in the world has teeth. Well, most of us sell dental. Like, there's successful people who just made it by selling dental. You know what I'm saying?
Sure.
Pick your favorite dental product. Just sell dental. Sell ACI. You know, dental doesn't have any, you know, requirements. You don't need an FFM or AHIP or anything. But there's successful people who just sell dental. If you can't sell dental or not willing to sell dental and ACI, you're never going to make it in a world of regulations and compliance.
Right. I love that. I love the litmus test idea. The stat I've been sitting on that I wanted to share on the stream, you guys, that I don't think we've discussed yet is, you know, the average, and I can't remember exactly what the origination of the stat is, but I've heard it repeated many times. And I do believe it to be true, especially being an upline, that the average licensed Medicare agent is only going to write about 4, maybe 5 apps a year. So essentially a 1 app per quarter. That's what the average licensed Medicare agent is going to produce. So understanding that, and again, I think what I love about this episode today is I feel like so much accurate information has been shared. If someone's coming into this with the idea of, I'm going to be a recruiter, I'm going to be an upline, I'm going to start my own agency, I hope they get a chance to listen to this podcast and understand what they're really getting into, because it can be a really rewarding a really rewarding business to be an upline. I think it's very, I think the analogy of a parent works really well, because you do have to treat some of these agents almost like children and be like, hey, listen, like, you know, you're doing this wrong, or, you know, you really need to go a different direction. You know, I've done this before. You probably shouldn't be doing that, etc. You know, so being a parent is super rewarding, but the day-to-day can be brutal sometimes, right? I mean, if you have kids, there can be days where it's just really tough. But
I want to say one more thing along with the parent thing. Yeah. There's plenty of agents of ours that, you know, we refer to them as they're dads. And we don't look at that. We don't look at there's plenty of them I don't look as children. You know, some of them are very self-sufficient. I don't want anyone to get the wrong idea of that. Sometimes it's just a joke, you know, sometimes it's just a funny thing. But you're right. You know, like with the agents that you kind of almost do have to, you know, act in that way. I think that's a great analogy, right? Because, you know, you love seeing your kids grow up, develop, get more skilled, get stronger, get more confidence. But it's not always easy. It's very hard.
It's been so rewarding. And if you've ever seen me around the country at events with my agents, I love spending time with my agents. As a matter of fact, I do Zooms with prospect recruits. If you can't get on a Zoom with me and we vibe, I probably won't recruit you or offer you contracts, because I don't give contracts to people I don't want into my house or sitting at my dinner table. Like I have that structure, the culture of my business, you know, because it is an intimate relationship. Like the mentor-mentee relationship is, you have to trust me enough to call me when stuff's not going right, and actually trust my advice, and not go like, if I give you advice and you don't trust my advice, and then you call Christian and be like, hey, Joanna told me to do this, but what do you think? Like,
all the time.
We're probably not fit, because you don't trust my advice.
Yeah.
Now, if I don't know, I'll say, hey, let me research that and get back to you, right?
Yeah.
But you want someone to trust your advice and actually follow through with the correction, right? But it's a really close, I mean, I was in hospitals this past year with my downline. I mean, I had 2 agents down in different parts of the states, and I had their kids on my lap. You know, it's a really close relationship, and I've seen them succeed, and I've also seen them through the worst days of their life, you know?
Yeah.
And so, I mean, I know that you guys give everything just like I give everything. But sure. It's a partnership. I can't show up for you if you're not going to show up for yourself.
Yes. Yep.
you know?
There's a need for mutual benefit. And I've said that for years, right? Like if it can't be 80-20 or 90-10, it has to be 50-50 for it to work for everyone.
Yeah.
Not just for the upline, but for the agent too. And I think that, if the agent is doing 90, or if the upline is doing 90 and the agent's doing 10, usually that agent isn't successful no matter what the upline does, right? They have to do their part. So I think that's so true. I know we're getting close to the top of the hour, you guys. I wanted to kind of transition into some final thoughts on this episode. This was a banger, by the way. Joanna, thank you for being on, and thank you for doing this. This was fun. As always, it always is. Glenn, let's start with you. Final thoughts on this episode's topics.
Man, I think this was, again, fantastic episode for anyone who wants a sneak peek into what is it like running an IMO, being an upline to agents. If you're out there and you are a new agent and you're stuck in that training loop, take action. Take action, jump in head first, see the people. That's one of those sayings that I'm a huge fan of is, talk to the people, see the people, because at the end of the day, that's ultimately how this gets done. Mm-hmm. That's how the transaction of writing policies, selling insurance, that's how it gets done. It doesn't get done being on training calls, which again, Joanna, Christian, and myself, we all put out tons of training all the time because we want to help you guys. We want to help new agents, both internally in our organizations and externally. But at the end of the day, you got to pull the trigger. You got to take action. You got to see the people, talk to the people. That's how this job gets done. So those are my final thoughts, you guys. Again, fantastic episode. If you're not in Medicare Mentors, by the way, please join Medicare Mentors. Joanna runs a fantastic Facebook group over there. One of the very few I would ever recommend anybody join. And do want to thank Joanna for being on the podcast today. Joanna, final thoughts on today's episode.
Yeah, I would talk if you want to start getting into mentoring agents, I would talk to your upline and ask them, am I ready to mentor somebody else? Because if you haven't done 100 applications yourself, for example, you shouldn't, is this going to take time away from your business? Can you afford to have that agent not successful? Because a lot of times people like, hey, Christian, Stormy wants to start selling insurance. I think I'm going to train her. How much time is that going to take away from your clients? Are you going to be able to financially do that? Right. And then obviously advances, are you ready to eat their chargebacks? Right.
Right.
But be careful on who you offer contracts to, and make sure that they're a good person that you would want calling you on Friday night. And because sometimes agents think that we're 24/7, like, Google, and we're not, So be careful. Oxygen mask first. I would have your own renewals coming in first before you divert your attention to the success of somebody else's business, because if you're not there yet, it's going to be a distraction. Like Christian said, you might have 10 agents and maybe one of them actually gets it out of the mud.
Yep. Well said. Yeah, guys, my final thoughts is I think training is extremely valuable, right? Joanna's training is very valuable. Our training is very valuable. Joanna's Social Security courses, prospecting course, everything that she talked about, our book of business acquisition courses, how to run seminars courses, calling leads course, all of those are very valuable, but none of it means anything without activity. This business is made off of activity, not training.
Exactly.
And, to kind of address, the extremely great question that Sandra asked earlier in the stream on the Facebook group, that was, how do agents get out of that? It's activity, man. There's no other answer than activity.
There's no magic pill.
There's no magic pill. Again, you have to be uncomfortable. You have to get rejected. You have to lose sales. You have to go through pain. And I think too many people are just afraid of that. So I would tell people, try to go through that as fast as possible, because the faster you go through it, the faster you're out the other side, and the faster you are growing. And that's what I would say. Great episode, guys. Really, really appreciate your time, Joanna. We will certainly do it again very soon. Thank you guys for watching all the way to the end. If you're watching on a platform that allows you to do so, comment #TeamReplay. Make sure to give us 5-star reviews if you're listening or watching on a platform that allows you to do so, such as Apple. We would appreciate it. And we'll be back with another episode of 7 Figures or Bust Podcast, everybody. See you in the next one.
Bye.
Happy spelling.